just so you all know, we are recording. That way we can make sure we share out with those who can't be with us this evening. We know it's hard, middle of the week, middle of the evening, with lots going on with work and families. So we're grateful for you all joining us. And we've got a host of fun faces today who are going to be part of our town hall. So I'm super grateful for them as well. And I'll share a bit more about our journey over this next 60 minutes together. So let's go ahead and we'll dive into the agenda and get ourselves started. So just to give an overview, yep, go ahead. Thanks, Ellen. So there's sort of three key areas we're going to spend time on this evening. One, we're just so grateful to have our counselor, Marina Shepard, here with us, who's just, y'all, she's been working it, and has just been an incredible support for our students in person, remotely, for our staff, helping strategize. But she's going to spend some time today with you, just sharing some of the trends that she's seen. It's been a year that we have been in this situation. It's been an adjustment with students coming back. We know that there's been a lot of challenges across the board, not to mention just general challenges of being an adolescent at these ages. So she's going to share some strategies for support and some of the things that she's seen with our students currently. We then are going to turn to some of our greatest support members of our school, members of our BBC. Ying is joining us, and Amy, who is single-handedly helping keep our lunch program afloat. She is phenomenal. The work that she has done behind the scenes to help organize a lunch world in a very new lunch environment has just been incredible, and has continued to provide services to our students, regardless of the number of lunches we have. And spoiler alert, it's a lot. So you'll get to see a little bit about what's happening with lunch duty and hear a bit more from Amy, because as you'll hear me talk about later, there's a long game here that we think we may be in making sure we're providing the right supports for our students and the safest way for them to engage together. So the work the BBC doing there is fantastic. We'll hear from them. And then I'll do a brief sort of state of the school. We're talking very high level, looking out at that 40,000 foot plane. We'll talk a little bit about what we've learned this year. We'll talk about what we know going into next year. And spoiler alert, there's a lot we don't know. And then we'll talk about how we're closing out the year, some of the big things that are coming up. We've got Lisa Stone here with me. So of course, I'll probably kick some things to her because she's a huge part of a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that are happening as we close out the school year. And then of course, at the end of that time, we'll make sure that we have a chance to answer any questions you have. So that's sort of the three-prong approach we'll have this evening, knowing that at the end there'll be that Q&A. So hang on to those questions in case we address them. Know that we'll have some time at the end to dive in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marina to kick us off.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for coming. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to share with you some of the issues that I've been seeing with our students and address some of the questions that have been coming up. I hope I also have some suggestions. But so what I'm going to look at is emotional regulation, anxiety, loneliness, online safety, and bullying and cyberbullying. These are the issues that have been kind of dominant in the last few months. Given our time, I'm just going to touch on each one. So emotional regulation, interestingly, emotional regulation, I would say, has been the issue of the year. It's been the biggest single issue impacting a lot of our students, which I guess is not surprising, where all the emotions are much closer to the surface and much more likely to erupt. And right from early in the year to now, lots of students struggling with managing their feelings, mostly anger and frustration, some distress, some sadness as well, but big explosions happening all over the place. So the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge that. And rather than going straight into pushing it away, it's like, I can see you're angry, I can see you're upset, and that can go a long way to beginning to calm the student down. And then try some more strategic kind of calming stuff. Deep breathing. I know you hear this all the time. It works. It's really effective. And there's a link on the next slide. But there's a lot of stuff out there. And remember, they will mirror you. So you, as you're talking to them, be doing it yourself. And then the next step, I would, once they've settled down a little bit, try and identify what the trigger was and try and help them to find out where in their body they felt it first, like hands, heart, stomach, headache. If they can identify those bodily sensations, then they can start using their calming strategies that much earlier. The other thing I want to suggest to you is be very aware of what you're modeling, both the helpful and the unhelpful. I'm not going to lecture you on the unhelpful. We all have our less than gracious moments, and you know where they are. But share the helpful. You are an adult. You've learned some tricks along the way. You know what works for you. So tell them. I mean, part of that is modeling an openness and an honesty. And yes, this is hard, but also share what you've learned with them, share your strategies, whatever they may be. The other issue, which is an ongoing one, is anxiety. So we've been living with a base level of stress and anxiety for a year. And that's totally justified and totally warranted that we're feeling that, and that's really been a struggle for us. What I wanted to say to you today is that the tipping point from feeling stressed and coping to really anxious and struggling has been academic anxiety across the grades. Now, sure, they're starting from closer to their tipping point than they may have been last year, but for many kids, that's what's really tipping them over. Anxiety about their grades and disappointing themselves and or their parents is the greatest source of stress in our students, and that can be very damaging in the short term and the long term. I know you want the best for your child, and academic achievement is important for success and finding joy in life. We know that. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. But being stressed and feeling that they're not good enough is not going to benefit their academic success in the long term. I also want to address a little bit of what might be your anxiety, especially in the pandemic, this idea of falling behind. So, first of all, surprising though it may be for our students who've got laptops, who've got connection, who've got all the amazing things that Bullis has to offer them, particularly our teachers, which I think we know are the most dedicated and committed. But the fact is that even in other schools, they're not really falling behind. Studies are showing that ELA, it has no losses, and math are showing small losses. But who are they falling behind? I want to draw your attention to what they're learning. They're learning about technology, the tricks that kids are showing me, the things they've made, the PSAs, the videos, the coding. I screen share with students all the time when I'm working with them on Zoom, and they show me all this stuff. And those are incredible skills that they're learning, very creative, and they're very comfortable with them. The other thing they're doing is that they're helping their peers and they're helping the adults with the technology. So they're learning to be kind and helpful, and they're learning to feel good that they've got something to give. They're learning to be patient, to be adaptable, to be flexible, to be resilient, how to stay in touch with their friends and family, how to cope with being stuck in their households all the time. I know they're coming out now. How to keep themselves entertained and healthy when they're in quarantine. So I don't think they're falling behind. I think they're on a massive learning curve, from the creative use of technology to some very complex organizational and time management skills, especially for the kids who are still online, and they're becoming stronger and more resilient emotionally. These skills are going to be of huge benefit in the future. The other thing that's quite painful is that a lot of our students are feeling lonely. And I think we all know how that hurts. So please do your best to try and spend time, even if it's just a little bit of time, focused on one child and what they would like to do. I know how hard that is. And I think I mean, for me, I'm big into realistic plans. If you can do 15 minutes, do 15 minutes. Um, I I think it'll be really appreciated and it'll really make a difference. I'd rather you made a plan for 10, 15 minutes and stuck to it than said, oh, we're going to go to the beach and then we're going to do this, that, and the other, and then disappoint them at the last minute. You've got work, you've got other commitments. I would like really encourage contact with friends. There was a question about, transitioning back into in-person school, but even without that, really encourage that contact. Everything you can do. It can be offline in the park or riding bikes. I mean, you know the drill, 6 feet apart, masks, and online. If online is what is available and what is possible, then that's what you can do. I know that being online can raise concerns about safety. I know there's issues about being online all the time and they're not getting any exercise, but let's talk about safety for a minute because this has reared its ugly head recently. So, online predation is actually pretty rare. Um, there are misconceptions about how common it is, but we have had at least one student who has been approached by predators and had a very disturbing experience while playing an online game. Now, I think games are a great way of spending time with friends and family and have helped to keep connections open and strong for many of our students. They just need to be private, not public. That's all you need to do is ensure that it's in private mode and you're controlling who has access to your kids. What I've said to the students, it's like if you're in a park and somebody you don't know, especially an adult, comes and tries to join your game, you're like, whoa, this is not right. You play with the people that you've chosen. I also know that for lots of reasons, it might be necessary to curtail screen time. Um, but I would urge you not to completely remove their phones and laptops, as that can really create a lot of social isolation, which is not good for anyone. I'm not saying give them free reign or never remove the privilege for some reason, but don't remove everything completely because that's their connection to the world right now. So the other concern about safety is bullying and cyberbullying. I've done and read a lot of research into bullying, but apart from the research, my observation is that bullying increases following changes and transitions. My theory is that there is a shakeup of the social order and a new one is being established. So having some students return to in person is such a transition. So we've been keeping an eye on this. And we've observed that there is some potential for some bullying dynamic situation to happen in some of the in-person classrooms. So the teachers and I are working in those classrooms to turn that potential around, to stop the hurtful behavior and those habits developing, and to develop kinder, more compassionate classroom cultures. So we're working with some individuals, some groups, and some whole classes. I'm not aware of any specific cyberbullying going on, but that's always a concern. So teachers will be talking to students in the next 2 weeks and reminding them how to ask for help or how to make reports on their own behalves or for others. So with that kind of gloomy spiel, I have to say that in my experience, this time of year is always demanding. Always. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and it's like February, March, my caseload goes nuts. Um, we're tired. Oh, I've lost my thing. Give me a second. So we're tired. We're ready for a break. There are always challenges. Children are learning every second, and part of that learning is coping with pain and making mistakes. And they're doing that. And we are supporting and teaching them. But let's remember that they are also learning and they're having successes and they're having moments of joy and discovery. Spring is here in beautiful California. The vaccinations are happening. Spring break is going to be followed pretty soon by summer break. Bring it on. I really think that we are all doing a fantastic job of taking care of our students in these unprecedented times. So I'm actually feeling very hopeful for our future. I don't know if we have time for questions or whether to wait to the end. So I'm going to look for guidance to Ms. Israel and Alan Simpson. So shall I wait until the end?
Yeah, let's capture questions at the end so that we can make sure we align in those. Do you want to share about these resources? This is probably a great screen if people are at their computers, or that they can screenshot too to have access.
Okay, well, thank you for the time, and I'll be here at the end for questions.
Awesome. I'm sure as you all are listening to Marina, I too, I have the privilege and I'm just so grateful to get to work with Marina and meet with her. And she always teaches me something. Last week, she taught me a great and put me through a bit of a great skill to just help recenter ourselves. So I'm just so appreciative of the work that she's done with our students and the thoughtfulness in wanting to keep us all in touch. So thank you, Marina, for shedding some light on that. And if you do have questions, get those ready to get captured. We'll make sure we have space at the end for Marina. I'll now turn it over to, well, we'll play the video first, right? And then we'll kick it over to Amy and Ian coming out of the video. So go ahead, Alan, let's share a little bit about our lunch volunteers.
Lunch duty is great. It's the 40 minutes that we get to stay with the kids and just watch them play and take pictures for the yearbook.
Okay, take picture for yearbook. Thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle Graken. I have a 5th grader at the North Campus, and I volunteer for Hot Lunch. I absolutely love it. It is truly the highlight of my day. Coming to the school and volunteering for Hot Lunch is super easy, really fun. You get to interact with the kids, you get to play games with them, and just see their smiling faces because they are so gleeful and happy to be on campus with their friends. Why do you love lunch duty?
Lunch duty is awesome because you get to see how your kids are playing and enjoying the lunch and hiding behind parents. It's an awesome time, but unfortunately, we don't have enough volunteers, so even Ms. Pickett needs to chime in.
Even teachers are here. To come here every year. And while it's done, more parents to come so I can help you too.
Great. So as you can see from the video, Hot Lunch is a parent run at our school, and we really need more volunteers. I'm Amy Bonfort, and I am one of the parents who helps with the Hot Lunch program, along with my counterpart, Melanie, at the North Campus. And we make sure that your kids have the lunch from the vendor that you order, and we recruit the volunteers to come and help oversee lunch. And so what we need from parents is an hour of your time to come on campus, and you help sort the food, which is all prepackaged, oversee the kids while they eat, and then watch them on the playground while they play. And this year it's pretty easy because you're only watching your class or potentially your grade because of COVID-19. So there's a way to sign up on the BBC Membership Toolkit website. Under your dashboard, there's a form for your grade, and you'll see a calendar. So you can just pick any open day. And again, if it's only one time per month that you have to give, we would appreciate any time that you have. It helps the staff to get their break during lunchtime so that they don't have to be out on the playground like you saw Miss Pickett was in the video. And you can have grandparents and nannies sign up. So if they have free time and they want to see the kids on campus, and like the video said, it's just a fun way to get to play with your kids, see who they're playing with, see if they're eating their lunch, are they eating their fruit, are they eating their vegetable, and just get to know the administration and other parents who are out there as well. And so we hope that you'll consider it. There's training documents all on the BBC website, and I'm also available to answer any questions that you might have. So you can reach out to me via email. So I hope that you'll consider it. Thank you.
Awesome. I can't say enough how much work Amy has done behind the scenes to help coordinate not only like us saying there's more kids coming back, Amy, now this grade level. Oh gosh, no, we didn't tell you about these guys. They're this different lunch period. There's been so much movement this year. And just a lot more lunch periods, right? In order for us to space appropriately, we've had to expand our lunch periods, and that's just a different approach and a bigger strain than we've had before. So there are a lot of open slots, and I can speak as someone who's been in the classroom, been in schools. It is a great highlight of the day. It's something I look forward to every day, of getting to go out there and connect with kids. So for all of you on this call who are part of Lunch Duty, thank you for all of the time you've put in and for helping support. It's such a huge relief for our teachers and staff to have those additional hands. And thanks to BBC for all the work they've done with this as well. Okay, cool. So I'll dive in now here, and then we'll take some time for questions. So as always, right, here we are starting with our guiding principles. And I share these tonight because, as we know, we built these last summer in conjunction with some parents and with staff members as well, thinking about what do we need to be thinking about as we head into this unknown. And we're sharing these today because here we are, right, as we're coming to the end of this year that we could not have predicted. And these yet still remain really critically important to us as we not only close out this year, but begin thinking about next year. These principles will help guide us into a lot of our planning, and there will be adjustments that we make throughout the course of the summer as we get closer to the fall and as we learn more. But know that these things are going to continue to be really important to us as we start to reimagine what 21-22 looks like, specifically making sure we continue to be mission aligned and that the health and safety of our students and our staff is paramount, is up front, right? So know that these are going to continue to influence a lot of the decisions that we make moving forward. So I want to take some time first to sort of talk about what we've learned this year, and then think about what does that mean for where we might be heading in the fall, and then just close out for the year. So if we can move ourselves on here, I threw Alan a loop here last minute, and I'm not a transition person, everybody, and I put in some transitions on these bullet points. So this will be a test for Alan and I to see how well I can pre-lead him into my next bullet point. So we'll give it a go. Here's what we've learned. This actually is really interesting, and I think something that's really important for us to keep in mind is that for some of our students, all of our students have done a phenomenal job adjusting to what remote means, but there are a lot of students who are really thriving in this remote world. These may be students who were quieter in class, maybe don't feel like they have the same ability and confidence to speak out and find that there's a different avenue for them to do it online. These may be students who prefer to process differently, and using a chat function, being able to work asynchronously gives them that space, right? So there's a lot of learning that we have to do in recognizing what have we been doing in remote learning and what are ways we can recreate portions of that when students do return in person, because there are critically important areas that we have to recognize and acknowledge that there are kids who are really thriving in this environment where they get to self-process and to turn off and not have all the stimuli in front of them with other students and things happening around them. So definitely something we need to consider, especially as we start transitioning students back in. And a lot of what Marina has talked about earlier is very much aligned with these as well, right? How are we helping our students emotionally regulate as they make this adjustment back in? But there are a lot of strengths and there are a lot of students who are really thriving in this environment that we have to acknowledge and make sure that we are planning for moving forward. Next thing we want to be thinking about is our teachers. This has been hard. This has been so hard on our staff. You've heard me share that probably every call we've got on. Our teachers are phenomenal. You all already know that, but I continue just to marvel at how quickly our teachers pivoted, and not only just pivoted and then sat with what existed, but have continued to adjust and to transform, whether that's, hey, now I have different students with me in this remote world. Let's figure out how we get to build relationships and connect. Oh, now I'm going back in person. How do I readjust? Our teachers have just been malleable and flexible and adaptable. And I can't, I don't have enough words to just describe how proud and how lucky I feel to be part of a staff that has continued to develop and to maneuver in those ways. And with that, there's a lot of new skills we've developed, right? Yes, we all know how to do PowerPoints, and there are some cool things we were doing online before, but gosh, the ed tech world that we've dipped our feet in has gotten deeper, right? So how do we continue to recognize what those new skills are, those new ways we can connect with students, that we can provide students access to practice, to materials, to resources? There's really a lot of different approaches that we've tried out this year and had the ability to try out that will be influential in, as we think not only next year, but moving forward. What does that mean as we look and redevelop and think about our curriculum, think about how we're approaching our standards, think about how we're approaching our PBLs? There's a lot to be gleaned from that. That's going to take some time, right? And it's going to be a lot of work with our staff in figuring out what those pieces are. But we know that there are some just key skills that our teachers now have that we definitely want to make sure that we don't lose. Moving on from that, Marina said this, and I can't stress it enough because this looks different and exists differently, but the idea of social connection we know is so important. And that looks one way for students who are in person and a different way for those who are remote with us currently, but yet it still is a need and still is necessary. And especially as we continue to push ourselves through a year plus of this and then slowly bring students back, we still aren't interacting in the ways that we used to, right? We're not sitting next to each other at lunch and we're not off with our masks, and it just looks different. And so making sure that we continue to find ways to build those social connections is huge. There are a lot of strengths in what we've discovered online. And I'm sure this is true for, actually was having this conversation earlier today about all these meetings that we now are able to run in this remote world become more efficient. In many ways, we can pull people from different spots and allow us to connect with people we maybe normally wouldn't have meetings with. And there's components of that we know we want to carry forward. The same is true for our students. What are ways that they've found to connect, whether it's through games, whether it's through being able to talk with a cousin who lives across the country or a friend who has moved? What are ways we can make sure they still are building that social connection piece remotely and in person? We know that this is just critically important for children. It's important for us as adults. And it's been a very long time since it's looked like have all been used to. So ensuring this is on the forefront of our mind, really helping build those relationships is something that we know we need to continue leaning into as we move into the summer and the fall. Last two pieces that we want to focus on. One is this, I am so proud of our staff for this, but we know individual student growth and individual student needs are critical. That was a key component of our program and has always been a key part of BCS. And ensuring that still has existed in this remote world, we haven't wavered in that. Our teachers have not wavered. If anything, they've found different ways to be innovative and continuing to focus on individual students. And again, like above, we know that a lot of those skill sets that we've developed will be influential in continuing to find ways to focus on individual student needs. So this is something that we want to make sure continues to be forefront as we think about planning. And then lastly, this is real, and this is sort of a lead-in. It has been a hard year for our teachers. It's been a hard year for our principals in ensuring that we have two fully functioning operating programs, right? To ensure that all of our students online have same access to specials, to advisory structures, to their teachers, to the curriculum in the same way that in-person students have. That is challenging for a lot of larger schools. We probably have heard a lot of districts grappling with how they can do that, or cutting classes or cutting hours or having things look different internally. And we are very lucky as a school of our size that we do have the ability to be malleable and to create that. But it's been hard. And I share that because that's really important for us to keep in mind as we think about moving forward. We don't have a world, I'm going to be really real, where we can operate the same way for another year. It's just, I see Lisa shaking her head, and it's just not possible. We can't have two fully functioning schools, remote and in person. So that's going to be part of how we reconsider, what does that mean looking forward? What does that mean as we adjust schedules and think about what's possible? Which is sort of this lead into what's next. Here's what we know. We know that the cases are continuing to decrease, right? The vaccines have been pushed out. They've gone through, our teachers have been jumping on board those. We know soon it's opening up to those in the 50 plus and then the 16 plus in some counties. So this has been a big push in seeing those cases decrease, which is positive, right? It's allowed for more opportunities for things to open and have access. Well, we expect to see that continue as we move into these next few months, right? All fingers crossed. Our hope is that we continue to see some of those restrictions adjust. Number of people in spaces, outdoor spaces, et cetera, which is part of what we've seen already from the CDC. They've revised their guidelines specifically, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this, making that adjustment from 6 feet to 3 feet between students who are masked, which is big, right? That's a key component and something that we will be considering heavily as we think about how we build out a schedule for the fall that allows us more flexibility, right? When we have to have more spacing, that limits the number of students we could have in the classroom, which then limits the number of teachers, all these things ripple, right? So we know that with 3 feet of spacing, that is more attainable for us to have in classrooms to make sure that we have more of that consistency or predictability as we are used to. This came out this morning, and it's a hot topic. I'm sure many of you have seen this. Right now, Pfizer has pushed out that their trials in those who are 12 to 16 are effective and they are protective of these students, which is huge. That's our middle school kids. And so there's an interesting trajectory that we anticipate will play out there in the next few months of what that means as we start planning for middle school. And we know that they are running trials now on younger children as well, right? So all this information that we will receive from that world in these next few months will be a big informer for us of what we're able to do as we move into the fall. But all that to say, we still anticipate that there will be precautions going into the fall. I don't know what those will be, right? Just as you are probably wondering, we wonder every day. Will there still be masks? Probably. Will there still be health checks? Because we know that that's a pain point as people are coming onto campus. What adjustments might we have to make sure everyone has completed health checks if that's in place? What does it mean for spacing? What does it mean for high touch surfaces, right? All these things we expect in the next few months that as more data comes in, as we see, hopefully things adjust with cases decreasing, that there'll be new guidelines issued both by the CDC and then by the county, which will help inform some of that planning. We know that in-person learning is where we've been, right? We've had right now about 47% of our students are back in person. And we know with that decrease in the spacing that will allow us to bring back more students. So we are planning for that route of expecting that we are all going to be back in some capacity in person. And yet we don't know what that might mean for possibility of remote. That's something that we will see formed in the next few weeks. It is something that is very heavily on our minds, and especially our principals' minds and our teachers' minds as we start figuring out schedules, right? This is really important for us to make sure, for us to build the appropriate schedules and structures, to build out class lists, right? We need to have an idea of what all that looks like. So in the next few months will be critically important for us as we see what new guidelines may come through. That will be a big informer for us in the schedule. But all of these signs here point towards positivity as we move towards the fall. I'm going to pause there actually and ask Lisa on the spot. Is there anything you'd add to what you are thinking about from your lens of what we know as we think about planning and moving into the fall? This is not a rehearsed question. I'm literally just throwing her a fastball.
No, not at all. What I do know, I can just speak from the teacher side. Teachers are ready and want to be back. So when we think about next year, just know that is the talk among the staff, the desire to and wanting to be back teaching our kids in person. So I've been having a lot of conversations with teachers about that. I mean, I don't have much more to contribute there.
Yeah. That's good. I know I literally threw her on the spot, but it's helpful to understand multiple perspectives. This will be a good point to plug that the intent to return next year form has gone out. That actually is really important to us this year. It's important every year because that influences what students, what spots we have and how we are able to enroll additional students. But this year that becomes really important because that is going to inform how we build classes. So small plug, big plug, I don't know here. If you haven't completed that, it's due tomorrow. Your help with that is huge. I meet with Martha, our registrar, on Friday to dig through those numbers because that will be our initial starting conversation about class sizes, right? And how we start thinking about those pieces. So know that these next few weeks, we will keep in contact. We'll do another town hall down the road too, to keep you all informed as these things change. But this is where our minds are thinking at this stage of what we know and where we see trends going. Let's talk a bit about what is upcoming to close out this year, though. So here are some upcoming events. There's sort of two portions I want to talk through with you, and then we'll have time for questions here. So first, big things down the pipeline, right? These are in no order, so I'll just talk about them all. Charter renewal is coming up for us. Our charter is good through 2022, June 2022, but we know we want to dive into that renewal process to ensure that there's a set amount of days, there's public hearings that need to happen with the county, who is our charter is with. So we are deep in the process of working through that. Families, you are a critically important part of this, critically important part. Your voice, your support of BCS, what you put out into the world, you joining us in collaboration as we present to the county is huge. We will have a lot of structured opportunities for that coming up to share with you, to give you some ideas of how to join in with that. We need you all, we want you all with that. But I share that with you now because as we get closer to this time, as we move through the summer and the fall, your dialogue, your conversation, your connection just around BCS, supporting BCS, the positivity around it, all those things are important for us as we start building out that renewal plan. So a plug there to just encourage you to continue to be strong supporters of BCS. That helps us out as we prepare this process. We're also embarking on our next stage of strategic planning, which we will start here at the end of this spring. And that will transition into the fall as well, right? A strategic plan is an opportunity for us to really start thinking, what's next? What's our vision? Where do we want to go? How are we going to develop the strategies to guide us that way? So there's a lot of components to this. Some of you have participated in strategic planning processes before. Know that we will have a large group that starts this process, and then we'll need a lot of hands as well in the fall to really dive into the creation of the actions around where we want to go. So stay tuned for opportunities for that. We'd love to have a lot of parents to join in. They're actually a huge part of the process for us to dive in and make sure that we are working together with you, with our teachers, with our staff to really help guide these next steps. And your voice, even if you are new to BCS, haven't been with us a long time, it's incredibly valuable to have your perspective. So as opportunities for that arise, we definitely encourage you to be involved. And then this one is not so much one to be involved with, but one to know about. This is the time of year where standardized testing happens, right? Where CAST happens and WEA, we have math. There's a lot of things upcoming. As Marina shared, the spring is just go, 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 especially after spring break. Actually, Lisa and I have a Burn the Midnight Oil meeting right after this to dive into some CAST planning. It's a delightful Wednesday evening. But know that that's coming this spring. You'll start seeing and getting some more information. You probably already received an SSID, some IDs for if you are a remote family for your kiddo that we'll need for login. So stay tuned for all that information. There'll be letters coming your way. But this is a big lift for us this spring as well to make sure that we have collected this data. This data is helpful for us as educators. This is a huge guide in how we may adjust our instruction. It also is, it's an indicator, right? That we can present to others to say, yeah, hey, we're doing what we need and our kids are showing growth. So we can all have our own internal feelings about standardized testing, and yet it's the currency in which we operate, in which we are able to say, hey, yep, here's how BCS is doing. Here's what we're really proud of. Here's where we're focusing on in areas we want to adjust in. So those are all big things coming up. Here are a few others just to share with you as well that we're in the works on, things we know that have existed historically that we wanted to figure out what we can do with to close the year within the given constraints. So this is where we're watching closely what's possible through the county, but things like field day, Makers Fair, thinking about 8th grade commencement, all these items are things that we have planning teams working on to figure out how we can bring those things to you and to our learners to close out the year, looking a bit different than maybe historically, but still finding ways to bring people together. You'll see on there also this idea of remote students visiting campus. Our hope is that through some of these, even other areas as well, the students who've been remote still get an opportunity to come and connect with peers, to come and connect with teachers, with other adults, etc. So we'll keep you updated as we get more finalized dates and processes around these, but know that when we talk about these are not exclusive to if you are in person, these are only for you. We're really thinking about how we can ensure that we are providing that access for our remote students as well, to have those touch points, to have that social connection in person if families feel comfortable with that. So this is a busy spring. Spring is always busy, but know that we're working to sort of get those wheels going again, They're going to look a little bit different initially, but our aim is to get some things moving as our sort of practice launch as we start prepping for the fall. As always, I've talked a lot, everybody. So now we want to make sure that we have time for questions for you all, from you all. That might be questions about things that are happening in school, might be questions for Marina, might be questions for the BBC. If you can use that Q&A button below, that'll be helpful so that we can dive into those questions, make sure we moderate. We'll do our best here in these next 15 minutes to capture as many and answer as many as we can for you all.
Okay, so it looks like the first two at least are for me, so I'll just take them. So one of them is, can you comment on relational aggression that's online? Yes, relational aggression is always a problem, and I think we know that there are specific factors online. For example, there is that disinhibition. So people are likely to say things that they would be much more reluctant to say in person. And, you know, seriously, some of these apps just seem to be designed to facilitate, you know, some bullying and meanness and relational aggression. I mean, why would you call something discord? Anyway, I think that the important thing to do is to talk to your students about what is friendship, how to be a good friend, and how to manage your friendships. I don't believe in saying to our students that everybody's your friend. Not everybody's your friend. You are allowed to have preferences. You are allowed to make choices. And when they get to high school, you want your children to be making good choices. So I think it's important to talk about what a friendship means. And something that I talk about, I've got this thing that I do with Play-Doh. That's why I'm waving my hands around like this, because I've got this Play-Doh thing. About balances and how, you know, you have a friendship because you like someone, they make you feel good, they're fun, they listen to you, whatever it is, and then they do something that upsets you or that you don't like, and you kind of like have to reassess. And sometimes there are things that you don't like about a person or that are a bit more difficult, but on balance you still like them. Like, it's we will be forgiving and tolerant of people that we're connected with. However, it can get to the point where it's like, no, this is not a safe and healthy place for me to be. And we don't often talk to our children about walking away from friendships, either saying, I don't like this. And I you know, I messages. I talked to a student yesterday about I messages. I feel this when you do this, please. So we talked to them a bit about communicating, you know, that I'm not comfortable with this, I want you to stop. But I think it's also to say to our children, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to decide that this is not a safe, healthy, comfortable place for me to be. And to coach them how to do that in a way that's civil, you know, and polite and respectful, that we're going to make different choices right now. This is a huge learning curve. I mean, managing friendships is very, very difficult. Um, so, and also if you notice your child doing it, because like I said earlier, they're learning, they're making mistakes, and they need to make mistakes in order to move on. So I think it's about talking about friendship, making it okay to communicate. We know, for example, in marriages, that where people communicate their dissatisfaction and address it, those marriages are more likely to continue than where people just suck it up. But also, it's okay to walk away. You don't have to be friends with everyone. I think that's a really important message. I just want to use this opportunity to make a plug. Lunch duty. I love lunch duty. I did lunch duty for 10 years as a parent and as a counselor. And I think if we want to create an environment where our children feel safe, and if we want a comprehensive bullying prevention program, a crucial part of that is lunch duty. Recess and lunch are as important as what goes on in the classroom. So please do it. And I want Amy to get in touch with me because I want to be more involved in that and support that more next year. Anyway, just exploiting my platform here. Academic pressure coming from teachers. So teachers are teaching a whole range of kids, and they have different strengths and different challenges and different abilities. I think it is important to negotiate with teachers. I think they're open to that, whether it's a young child and you're a parent supporting that, or whether it's an older child to do it on their own. I had an interaction with a teacher today, um, about a middle school student who's totally overstretching herself, and I contacted a teacher and said, can she please renegotiate her FLGs with you? And I wasn't sure how the teacher would reply. The teacher immediately replied, this is a great opportunity for her to learn about making realistic goals and managing her caseload. I thought that was a wonderful response from that teacher. If you feel like your child is struggling, or that it's unrealistic for your child, if they're older, encouraging them to reach out to the teacher, or if they're younger, you have a conversation with that teacher yourself. I definitely feel that we have a very pressured group of students here, and so, it's coming from all kinds of different places, but it does seem built into our culture somehow, and it's something we need to be aware of. And I know that our teachers, our principals, and our superintendent are so focused on the mental health and emotional well-being of our students. I've never been in a school where I feel so supported by admin in addressing those priorities. I'm going to go because there's lots of other questions. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Marina. And actually a good kick in plug for Hot Lunch to kick it to Amy to answer this one. Does your kid have to be in person to volunteer for Hot Lunch, Amy?
No, they don't. We would love to have you if you have the time and you can be on campus and want to be part of the community. We would welcome you, and we could definitely use the extra hands. And so, no, please sign up. You'll have to come to me to sign up for that because you won't see the calendar for sign up. So come to me, let me know what day and time works for you, and we'll get you onto the schedule. And my email is amy@bonfort.com. My first name at my last name.com.
Awesome. Great. Good questions here about timeline. What is the timeline? Like, Maureen, you didn't tell us anything. You just said you don't know a lot of stuff. It's the classic, Alan always gives me grief. The classic thing you're going to say, Maureen, is you don't know. It's true. I don't know. We don't know, and yet we need to plan because we have a lot of pieces of the puzzle, right? I think I've shared this with you before. Typically, we would be building a master schedule for the fall in like a January, February timeline, right? That would be the key place for us as we move. So we need to be making action on this. Our hope is that we'll get a lot more clarity these next few months. And so definitely, I think by the time we hit June and July, we're going to have to lean into what we know and make some decisions. The benefit of this year is that last year, we were making decisions in an environment we'd never been in, right? We didn't know what it meant to have a health screening form. We had to figure out what the right questions were, figure out how to build that. We didn't know how to set up classrooms and structures, right? So the benefit is we've had some experience with that. The big question is, what will things look like? But our ability to pivot is there for sure. So our hope is that we'll have a lot more clarity to provide to you before we walk out the doors this school year, and then provide you with updates over the summer. A few good questions about percentage of teachers. I don't know percentage who've been vaccinated. I know that it is many. There's HIPAA pieces there that I can't disclose, right? But I know that just looking at the PTO coverage needs and the teachers being creative with, like, I can pop in this point and I can hop out at this point to get vaccine. We know a large percentage of our staff have. I see Lisa nodding in confirmation of that too, which is great. Lisa, great question. I'll kick this one to you. Will students go back to their home campus in the fall?
Yeah, that is the aim. That if you're a South family, South campus. If you're a North family, North campus. So that is the idea. That's the thought right now.
Yep. And another one that is a good one for you to lean into. When do standardized tests start? When does CAS start? What grade levels?
Yes. So the SBAC, the CAS testing, the state testing is for grades 3 through 8. NWA testing starts in kindergarten, however. So in terms of end of the year testing, we anticipate that all grade levels will experience some level of end of year testing. Our CASP window we're looking to test from early May through early June. And we've needed to get really creative with these in-person and remote. And so it may look a little different from what it's looked like in the past, where it's just one day after the other, looking at possibilities of a few days a week over the course of a couple weeks. But that schedule will be made clear to you well in advance. So just as Maureen said, expect to hear communications really soon about standardized testing, and we'll make sure that you're all in the know when things finally get put in place.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. A few questions about remote learning in the fall. As a charter, we actually had to get, a lack of a better word, approval from the state, from the governor, to say, hey, your model and your charter do not typically allow any sort of remote learning. You are an in-person structure, and yet with this pandemic, we'll approve you, right? That just happened generally for everybody. Two things have to be true. One, that would have to happen for next year, right? So the governor has not yet made any statements yet about, and there's not been any decisions made about access for that. But as a charter who does not have a remote component, there would need to be that approval piece put in place for us to be able to offer something next year. So that's true. The chances of that, you probably can surmise the same way that I could. That's as we see things pan out with vaccines and such, they'll have to make a call on that sooner rather than later. But the other component of that I think is important to note is that piece, which we just want to be as clear as possible now, of the ability for us to build a remote program like exists now is just not possible next year. The way that teachers have been stretched, that we've had to split class, like there's just so many pieces. Specialists have been movement. If we do and have the ability to offer a remote learning program next year, if we have a need and we are able to, it will look different than it does this year. That may look like limited access to specials. That may look like a different structure with teachers. Like there's a lot of those pieces we need to think about. But in order to get more of our teachers back in person, there's a lot of adjustments we'd have to make to that online world. Something we have not seen success in with other schools in conversations with other districts, other schools, is the model of teaching kids remotely and in person at the same time. Not good, doesn't work. Lack of focus. When we talk about that focus on individualized learning, that can't happen well. So that's something that we definitely would shy away from, which means that any sort of remote structure would have to look quite different. I also see some questions about, could kids who are remote, any chance they can return in person yet this year for the remainder of this year? The reality is, with all of this standardized testing coming off that Lisa just shared, with spring break, with the lead-in that it takes us to adjust rosters, the capacity is just not there for the things that we need to focus on. It has taken us, getting down to a science, about 3 to 4 weeks, once parents have filled out those surveys, to figure out how to make the adjustments to rosters, actually do the calendaring of that, give teachers the space to set up classrooms, flip students, etc. So the timing is just not there, as well as at this stage, some students have moved teachers 3+ times. And the relationship piece there is incredibly important. For us to do that yet again for students as they enter April or May, as they enter a really challenging close to the school year, is just not healthy for their emotional well-being, as well as the dynamic of a classroom. So at this stage, if students are remote instructionally, we'll have them stay remote instructionally. That is the why we're thinking about creative ways to get remote students on site for the remainder of the year in some different capacities. What that looks like is yet to be determined, but whether that's opportunities to participate in some sort of field day, opportunities to be part of Maker Faire, etc. Marina, I've got a question here for you that I want to kick, that I think it's a good one. Let me see if I can, good one. Tools for dealing with sibling relationships during this time. Sibling relationships, sibling aggression. This is real, I'm sure, in households, yeah.
I know, I'm always quite surprised when I hear about siblings who are getting along just fine. I was like, whoa, they're not fighting? Having said that, I know that this can be a really serious issue. You know, it brings two things to mind for me. One is what I said earlier about trying to spend that one-on-one focused time, even if it's short. The other thing is something interesting that I read a long time ago about dealing with sibling rivalries and fairness. And what it said is that is that it's more important to talk to kids about, I'm giving you what you need and I'm giving you what you need, which isn't necessarily the same thing. I think what's important, I guess that's a slightly different issue. Sibling aggression in COVID time is make sure that you're not the resource that they're fighting over. Do your best with that and give them the space from each other if they need it. Um, what I see is even in the most awful sibling conflicts, including my own children, is that they do come together eventually. It just might take a long time. So try and give them the one-on-one time so that you are not the resource they're fighting over. Let them have the space and let them, I was talking about being friends with everybody earlier. Don't expect them to kind of love each other all the time. There might be times when they have different needs. And something that happens a lot with older kids is that the younger ones invade their space. They go into their rooms, they touch their stuff. And I think that's a big problem for older siblings, and the older siblings are always the older. When I fought with my brother, I was told I was the older one. I had to be more sensible when I was 8. And I noticed when he was 8 and I was 14 that I was still the older one who had to be sensible and he was still the younger one. So be aware of what you're putting on them in terms of like birth order and how you treat them differently. With a lot more questions, so I better let you move on.
No, that's a great one. We'll do one last one here. Lisa, this is a good one for you to give some explanation about hybrid is working. Why haven't we been able to extend hybrid to 3, 4, and 5? Why haven't we added more days, I guess, for hybrid? Instead of just 2 days in person, why couldn't we do 4? Why can't we do 5?
Yeah, it comes down to space. It comes down to staffing. It comes down to the need to then have to redo the entire schedule once again. So there are a lot of factors. And as Maureen said, trying to do all of that at a time where we're heading into testing, where it would also necessitate probably changes in rosters again if we were to do that. And so for all the reasons that Maureen stated that earlier, with bringing more people back, it's the same even if we bring them back for more days.
Yeah, there's the piece that I'm most proud of that BCS has done has stuck to the truth of what we believe about programming. We believe in access to specials, right? We believe in structuring math programs for students. We believe in giving them access to language. And all of those components have stayed true for all of our students who are remote and in person. And because they've stayed true, that has just limited our ability to do more of a thing because it means somebody gets less of a thing. So for us to add more days for students, we would need more teachers to be there, which means other students who aren't able to be in person all of a sudden would have to have something less than. And that was sort of that stake in the ground we said early on, is that's not the program we wanted to create this year. We wanted to make sure that equitable access to all of those components of our program were true. So with that's prevented us from maybe doing some of the adding on additional days and capacities. So we know it's a challenge. We also know this year has not been a year where there's been a right answer. There hasn't been a very clear path. It's been very muddy as we've wandered through. And I'm just really grateful for the team for being creative as we've worked through it, as well as families for you, for being so gracious and thoughtful and supportive as we've all worked through this together. I want to recognize time. It is after 7. I know people have a lot going on, so we want to close out. But I'll close with this. Know that we will keep you updated as we learn more, as we start making some of these key decisions, working with our teachers and rolling through these next few months. There'll be a lot of communication because we want to make sure that you are as informed as possible. In the meantime, if there are burning questions on your mind, you have my email. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to make sure that you're feeling like you have access to answers too. And we've got an exciting few months ahead of us. There is a lot still to come in this school year. So as much as we're talking about what may happen in August and September, April, May, and June are going to be really action packed. And so we're excited to continue to dive in, grateful to continue to have this partnership together. And glad we've got great weather and good sun, and there's some positivity, and as Marina said, some hope ahead. So thank you all for taking time this evening and joining us. Thank you to Amy, Marina, Ying, Alan, Lisa. Appreciate you all being part of this process too, and connecting with everybody. Hope to see you all in person soon, in some capacity. Soon we'll have some forum where we all get to mingle and chat after these sessions. But for now, enjoy your evening, everybody. Have a great night. Take care.